episode of The Claus Corner. Today's guest is an actor, director, producer, writer, editor, and voice actor. He is most well known for his portrayal as Richard Chip Douglas on the hit television series My Three Sons. Please welcome Stanley Livingston to The Claus Corner. Stanley, how are you?
I'm doing great, Richard. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you very much, first of all, to Steve Joyner for reaching out to you and saying, I'd love you to be on my show. So thank you, Steve. And thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to be on my show, because I loved doing my research on you, because I'd not realized how much you did, all the great people you worked with, what an interesting life you led and still continue to lead. So this is going to be a fun interview.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just, I'm rebuilding my website. It's been up for about 20 years, but I hardly ever look at it. And in the process of doing this new one, I was looking at all the things that I've done and pictures from them, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I did so much stuff.
Well, we're going to play a little game called Stanley, This Is Your Life.
Yeah. Well, I did the one for William Frawley on TV. This Is Your Life. That was pretty crazy. That was back in 1961.
Right. Well, I want to go way back to Stanley Livingston early years. How did swimming lessons turn into an acting career?
Well, my parents moved to LA and in 1948. I came along in 1950. My parents, my mom was mortally terrified that I would drown. There was an incident in the family, I guess, a couple of years before, where I had a cousin that, I don't know if he was in a lake or a pool, but he drowned. And my parents wanted to make sure I knew how to swim. So they looked around, found a swim school in Hollywood. In fact, it was right on Hollywood Boulevard by Western Avenue. And she took me there. And there was a lady named Jen Levin, who was the head teacher there and owned the swimming pool. And she taught me how to swim at, about 2-3 years old. And I was like a little fish. So the lady that owned it, Jen, was very entrepreneurial. She had literally hundreds of kids were coming to this school. So it was well populated with little tiny tykes like me. And she put together these little shows where you would put cars and swings and bicycles underwater. And there was a porthole she had cut on the side of her pool underwater. It was like about 4 foot diameter, I guess, probably 3-inch thick piece of glass to withstand the pressure. And you could go down the stairs, and if you had a camera, it was like really interesting. You could see him. It was like the cameraman was underwater. So they did all these photographs. They ended up getting published in magazines of that day. It was McCall's, Vogue, and they did little articles on what was called water babies, which was us. And so we'd ride these vehicles and cars and stuff underwater. We'd do high diving. And there was a show on in that era called You Asked For It. And it was probably her that asked for it. But the production company came down and did a whole segment on us. And, we did our thing underwater. It was pretty phenomenal. Some of the kids were like 2 years old. I was probably about 3 or 4 by then. And so I was kind of part of this entourage of underwater kids called Water Babies. Because of that show airing, a lot of Hollywood type people started bringing their kids to learn how to swim there. Producers, agents, directors. So suddenly there was a whole different group of people there. And there was an agent whose daughter was swimming there. And she saw me and, was a pretty extroverted, cute little blonde haired kid. And she thought I had what it took to become a child actor. I had those qualities. I was pretty extroverted. So she kept after my mom, and finally my mom relented, and she said, well, the way it works, we're going to send him out. But, at first he probably won't have any lines. He'll just be an extra. My mom said, we're going to try it and you're going to be an extra. And I remember I was thinking in my head, an extra what? It wasn't well explained to me. So I went out on some, interviews and got cast as like a neighborhood kid, like on, I think it was Dennis the Menace and a few other period shows. And one of the shows I got cast as a neighborhood kid was Ozzie and Harriet. And I don't know why. It was the first episode. Well, actually, I did a couple where I didn't have any lines. And I think it was about the third time I was there, Ozzie, knew of me and saw me as, you know, one of this bunch of little kids that were in his neighborhood. And the segment was about Ozzy selling Christmas trees to earn some extra money. And he had a prospective client there. And the gag was, you know, here's a sea of Christmas trees in his backyard. And all of a sudden, about 8 little kids come marching out of it with backpacks and sleeping bags. And apparently we had spent the night camping in his little forest there. And anyway, we shot it a couple times, and then he kind of pulled me aside. He said, could you say this line? And he told me what to say. He says, okay, I'm going to put an X on the ground right here. And what the way I want you to do is just do what you did before. But when you get to that X, stop, look at me, say the line. So we shot it again, and I came out with the kids. But when I got to that point, I stopped, and my line was, sure was mighty good camping in there, Mr. Nelson. And then I turned and went, and he kind of laughed, and he said, that was great. That was great. He goes, let's do it one more time. And then they moved the camera, and so it was closer to me, like a close-up, I guess. And yeah, I did it again. And before the end of the day, he went up to my mom and said, I'd like to have Stanley come back. And he goes, could you please give your contact information with my secretary in the front office? So, you know, my mom was all enthusiastic. I was just a kid. So, you know, as long as they were giving me ice cream and there was donuts around, they could keep me satisfied. And it was fun playing with the other kids. So some of whom went on and had acting careers too, but they were, you know, doing what I was doing, just trying to get work and trying to launch a career. But yeah, a couple months later, he called again and came back, and I was in another show where I actually had, you know, lines, 4 or 5 lines, and I did those, and I guess I did it well enough that he kept calling back. So from about 1957 to end of 59, I probably did a dozen, maybe 15, 16 episodes of Ozzy and Harriet. And by the end of it, he was actually writing episodes for me. There was an episode called The Pony, and, you know, it was written with me in mind and featured me. And there was another episode that he wrote for me. So he was really an early champion of my career and liked what I was doing. So meanwhile, that's how you get into showbiz. But you know, just being there is half the job. What else happened is when you weren't, you know, actually being needed to film, I would go around to other people's sound stages. I was just curious, you know, about other shows and how this was being done. And I was a curious little kid. So I walked over onto the sound stage that was right next to Ozzy's, which was stage 5. And they had a show there. And anyway, they were using a horse. And I remember I was just entranced because I loved horses. In fact, I was taking horseback riding lessons. So I remember when they led the horse off the stage, they kind of went out a back door, and I followed the trainer and the horse out. And so he said, who are you? And I go, I'm working next door. And I go, what a cool horse. And he said, hey, how would you like to learn how to brush him down? So he gave me a couple brushes, and I'm brushing this horse. He says, here's some carrots. Why don't you, here's how you feed him. And he showed me, and then I stood around for a while and played with the horse and fed him some carrots. And then went back over to the soundstage. Well, like I said, I was just a kid. I had no idea who that horse was, but that was Mr. Ed. That was the Mr. Ed soundstage. So anyway, across from Ozzy, there was another show shooting across the street in another soundstage. And they had a dog over there that was really cute. It was a basset hound. And so when they had the stage door open, I'd go over and I'd start playing with him, and met the trainer, who coincidentally later was the trainer of the dog on My 3 Sons, Tramp. But this was his gig that he had prior to that. He had this dog. And so I'm playing there. And one day this guy came up while I was playing with the dog and said, who are you? And you know, I stood up, as my parents always told me to do when I met an adult, stick out my hand and go, my name's Stanley Livingston, and no wisecracks, please. And so he cracked up, and we stood there talking for a couple minutes. You know, he seemed interested in me, and you know, we just chit-chatted. And finally he said, I'd like to meet your mom. Is your mom around? And I was secretly horrified. I was like, am I in trouble? And he goes, no, you're not in trouble. He goes, but I would like to meet your mom. And I said, okay. So I said, you're gonna have to go back across the street to Ozzy and Harriet soundstage. He goes, that's fine. You know, he said, why don't you take me over? And okay. So I lead him across. We go inside the soundstage. I bring this guy up to my mom and go, Mom, this guy wants to talk to you. And I saw my mom was like she had this weird expression. Well, what I didn't know, you know, he was just some adult to me, some big guy. And anyway, I kind of wandered away from their conversation, but I kept hearing people. They were standing there talking, and I was, well, what I didn't know, the guy that I brought over to my mom was Jackie Cooper. And across the street, they were shooting a TV series with him as the star. It was, I'm trying to think the name of it, the People's Choice. And the dog was this dog that was on a show called Cleo. And Cleo was the dog. It was kind of a little bit like Mr. Ed. Mr. Ed actually talked in the People's Choice. It was a husband and wife. And, they were always bickering. And then it would cut to the dog. And he didn't really talk, but you could hear his thoughts. It's like, oh, why don't they shut up? Or, they're always arguing. It's getting up my nerve. He would make commentary. So it was pretty funny, what they had going. But anyway, he stood there talking to my mom. And that was in 1958, about August. And the next thing I knew, in December of 1958, I had just turned 8 years old in November. In the meantime, he wrote a TV pilot for me. And I was the star of it. Oh, get out of here.
Oh.
Hopefully, there we go. Everybody always calls as soon as they get on the phone. It's like insane.
Maybe it's another movie role.
Yeah. So Jackie Cooper wrote this pilot, with me in mind. And how that came about was he was one of the Little Rascals.
Yeah.
But, after that, in 1931, he starred in a movie called Skippy, which was a big deal movie. And it was like, I think, the highest grossing movie of 1931. He was nominated for an Academy Award as a leading actor, and that record still stands. He is the youngest person ever nominated for an Academy Award as a leading actor. And the director, Norman Taurog, was nominated and won. And the film, I can't remember if the film won the Academy Award or not, but it was, definitely nominated. But, it was about this precocious kid.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to stop right there. So I love the story, and I know where you're going with it. But I just want to ask you a couple questions, because I think what makes these stories so great is that, one, even with Ozzy and Harriet, you had no idea who he was at first. You're just a kid saying, or maybe you didn't know who he was. You had a show, but like with Jackie Cooper, I think that's what made these stories so great. Is you're just a kid. He's an adult to you, and so you weren't starstruck. Oh my God, this is the great Jackie Cooper, and that probably made it so much better. And he probably was, as an actor, saying, this kid's just a regular. He's not, he's not starstruck, and you're just a natural. I love all these stories of how you just fell into everything. I mean, I know you worked hard and you were good, but how long from the swimming lessons until your first role did it take? Because I know you had some uncredited roles. I think one of them might have been in Lassie, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, I actually wasn't an extra in that one. I was actually a stunt double, if you can believe that. It was actually in what's called the transition show, where the original guy that was on the show, Tommy Reddick, he'd done the show probably about 4 or 5 years, and he was getting a little older, and they decided it might be more interesting if they had a younger kid, another time span to shoot through. And so Tommy Reddick's character was leaving the show, and that family was moving out of the farmhouse, and a new family moved in, which contained John Provost as Timmy, and June Lockhart was the new mom. I believe the mom originally was Jan Clayton on the original one, and a new dad. So, they moved to the farm, and in that episode, he decides he's not going to take Lassie with him, Tommy Reddick. And he's going to give the dog to Timmy. And so he does. But Timmy isn't real happy about living on a farm. Then he runs away. And I forget if he falls off a bridge, but somehow he ends up in a lake or a pond or whatever it was. And he can't swim. So he's out there flailing around and drowning. Well, when that scene came, they didn't want John doing it. He was indispensable, and they could sacrifice me to the gods, I guess. So they threw me out in the middle of this pond. And if you look closely, it's still hard to tell. I mean, I have to tell somebody that was me, but it's me actually out there flailing around, pretending like I'm going down and I'm drowning. And then the dad runs out into the water and grabs me and picks me up. And you know, his job was to keep my face turned away from the camera and bring me in. But John and I looked, we were the same height. We looked the same. And the irony was, once I got into the place where they needed me to be flailing around, I almost did drown. The bottom of the pond was covered with muck, and I got stuck in it. I went down. I couldn't almost get unglued from it. It took all my strength to come back up and get another gulp of air. So I was glad when that was over. I was like, oh my God, I actually almost did drown. But yeah, and I never saw that show until recently. I just happened to look on YouTube or something, and it said it was the transition show. And then I put two and two together, and I was like, oh wow, this is the one I think I'm in. So I watched it, and yeah, finally saw me out there drowning and relived the moment.
So
But yeah, all
I'm
these things.
surprised they didn't have a stunt double, like a real I guess, I mean, I'm not sure if there were professional stunt doubles at 8 years old.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But
Well, no,
surprised
they
had
are.
you.
Well, they would have midgets, guys that were vertically challenged, and they would, if there was anything dangerous. In fact, I have a friend, and she's done that her whole life. She shouldn't do it anymore, but she's been a great, child stunt double her whole life. She, like in Jurassic Park, when that kid's trying to climb over the fence and they're about to turn the electricity on, and they do, and he gets blown up. Well, that's Laura Dash. The scene where the girl falls through the roof, and she's hanging on to that thing, and right below her is that dinosaur nipping at her heels. That's Laura too. And then they CGI'd the actress's face over hers. So that is a vocation in our industry, and Laura Dash was probably the preeminent stunt double for kids. But she's my age, so she wasn't around when I was doing it. She was just a kid too. And so yeah, they didn't want to risk John's life, so they knew I could swim. So that was the whole point of the swim lessons. Is before I actually got hired, they came down to the swimming pool, dressed me up in John's clothes, that checker tie-in tablecloth shirt he wore in every episode, and then I jumped in the pool and pretended like I was drowning. Like, hey, okay, so we'll bring you out there. You're in the pond. You can pretend to drown. I mean, the reason I was telling you all this is backing or going forward to the Jackie Cooper thing. So what happened was I did this pilot, Skippy, which was based on the movie that he did. And the pilot never sold. But in those days, actors didn't really have reels. It was very tough to get film on yourself, unlike what came later. Actors would see their show and tape them on videotape and put together a videotape reel, and later went to DVD. So when a production company wanted to see you, or a casting director, you'd send them a videotape or a DVD. And later, now it's online. You just direct them to your website where all your different stuff that's on your reel is up. But in those days, to do something, you had to have a copy of what you did on 16 millimeter film. So my parents, after we did the pilot, I was under contract to Jackie Cooper for 3 years. So 58, 59, and 60. My parents would borrow the reel. And whenever I was being submitted for something, I think the first thing that came along after that was Please Don't Eat the Daisies. And the agent borrowed the reel from Jackie and had it screened for the producers. And that's how I got hired to be in Please Don't Eat the Daisies from Doris Day and David Niven. Yeah. And then about a year later, there was a TV show coming along that was going to be going into production called My Three Sons. And my agent arranged for the producer to come to a theater. And this would, it's crazy. How you would have to do this was you would have to rent a theater, and it always had to be after midnight, after they had screened whatever movies they were showing. And then you'd have to pay the projectionist to stay and show your film. And so that was the routine. But some producers came and saw it, and immediately the next day they made an offer and wanted me. I was the first person hired for My Three Sons right after they knew Fred McMurray was committed to do it. But the big problem was, which we didn't tell the producers, I was still under contract to Jackie Cooper. But it'd been about a year and a half now, and the pilot hadn't sold, but it was a wonderful tool for me to get work. And my parents had to go to Jackie Cooper and go, hey, realistically, is this going to go anywhere? Because Stanley just got like an amazing offer to be in a TV series. Of course, we didn't know Fred McMurray was going to be in it yet. We weren't told that. And I think he realized that it wasn't going to sell. and he was on to doing another TV series called Hennessy, I think then. So he graciously let me out of the contract, and next day we went in and signed the contract to be on My Three Sons. So the whole point of all these little things is to show, if you're an actor, that is the trajectory. You know, you get going and you do extra work, you learn the ropes, you watch the director, you watch other kids doing it, you kind of get your bearing. Then at some point, if you're lucky, which I was, somebody like me or like what I was doing, which was Ozzie Nelson, gave me some lines and kept calling me back. And then, you know, me just being precocious me, wandering around when I probably shouldn't have, onto other people's sound stages. You know, it set up the dynamic that I met somebody who, you know, liked the way I look. I stood up, you know, eyeball to eyeball with this adult, and, you know, wasn't intimidated by him at all. And I think he liked that. And it was kind of the qualities that he wanted as character. And I'm sure a light bulb went off in his head. This kid reminds me of me, you know, when I was in Skippy. And then that came about. And because of Skippy, it opened another door, which was, you know, movies and My Three Sons. So that's how my career got going.
Well, I love that because, well, first of all, I think what you just said was that you weren't intimidated, you're fearless, you had a great personality, you were cute. So all of those, they're like, oh man, we love working with you, and you're easy to work with. And I think because most times you hear like, oh yeah, I got my first job and I didn't get another job for another year or so. Anyways, but you're over there as a kid working with David Niven, Doris Day, Joanne Woodward, Paul Newman. You worked with some greats at a very young age.
Yeah, that guy was I just did a thing last night at the Hollywood Museum. They just had 100-year anniversary of the Little Rascals, our gang. So I went to it, and when I was telling the publicist, was a friend of mine that invited me, I said, well, you know, that I'll come, but I go, you know, I don't really know this. I have a Little Rascals connection. Not that I was in the Little Rascals, but, you know, I certainly appreciated them when I was a little kid, and, you know, it stimulated me to organize my own little gang of guys in my neighborhood that we terrorized the neighborhood from the time we were about 8 till we were 10. And, you know, we just did. I remember one day we just said, hey, we should build a raft, you know, like a raft out of wood. And you know, we're going to sail on it. So we went around to all these construction sites and got plywood. And I had these, you know, 7, 8-year-old kids kind of under my command, like building. We built like a little shed on it. And at the end, it's suddenly dawned on me, it's like, hey, where are we going to take this? There's no river around here, you know. So we had to use our imaginations, but you know, that's the kind of stuff you would do, and you know, that's what you need to be as an actor too. You know, a lot of imagination, creativity, and you would pretend. And you know, when the war ended, you know, we're all walking around with little soldier outfits with toy guns and battery operated machine guns and pretending we were Iwo Jima or something. But yeah, it was funny, you know, how it just kind of fell into place. I mean, before that, though, I think my parents had a real inkling that I could be destined for that. When we moved into a house, before I moved into the apartment where we eventually lived when all this took place, but just prior to that, we lived in a house not far from there. And in the backyard, there was the remnants of a TV set. It was kind of like a wood console, but I guess the picture tube was no good and they took it out. So now it was a TV, you know, with just a hole in it. And I remember I'd watch TV and then I would dress up and I would go behind the TV and pretend I was on TV, you know, by being there and having like hand puppets, or I'd, you know, like pretend I was Superman. Sometimes I'd shoot out of the TV set. And then at school, at Vine Street Elementary School, they had an auditorium there. And, you know, I wasn't anybody. I was just another kid. But there were shows, you know, where you would sing. One time that for the Christmas show, they needed an MC. Well, guess whose hand went up? You know. So I just was gravitating towards, you know, show business at its earliest phases and simplistic form. And, you know, I think my teacher saw that. And it's funny, years later, I guess it was about 10 years ago, I got an email from a guy named Billy Tyler. And he's called me up and he said, you know, I'm just confirming, didn't you did go to Vine Street Elementary School? And I said, oh, yeah. And I went there. And he said, well, I'm the principal. We're having a 100-year anniversary. God, we'd love if you came and spoke. And I said, yeah, no. I said, I always wanted to go back there, but I was afraid to walk through the door. I didn't want them to think I was like some pervert coming in to look at little kids. So I
Yeah.
was always intimidated about doing that without permission. And then I was worried because I don't look like I did when I was 9. You walk through the door and I wasn't sure where to go. So I went in, met him, and in fact, a couple other kids who were now adults went there. Charlene Tilton was there. Forgot who the other guy was, but he had gone to elementary school. But yeah, when I walked in the front door, I was shocked to see this. They had a showcase, and I think it was a picture of all the child stars that had gone there. Mickey Rooney. I had a picture of me and my brother. I mean, there was literally about 10 or 20 pictures of which I was one. So I was kind of honored to be remembered in any way, but that was really nice. And it was fun to go through the old school too. I was like, gosh, I go, it seemed so big when I was a kid, like that main hallway that kind of went from end to end. It felt like a hallway in a condominium or something, or apartment building. It wasn't as massive as I remembered. And anyway, there was one lady that was still there. I think she was in her 90s. I guess I wasn't in her class, but my brother's 3 years younger and went there. And she had my brother as a student. And she wasn't a teacher anymore, but she came to the event. I got to meet her.
I love it. Now, I want to talk about you and your brother for a minute, because he obviously got into acting at a very young age as well. And I know you two acted in at least one movie together, and there was a problem, which I love the story. I heard you tell this before, where he got fired because he wasn't looking at the camera, and they found out that's why he needed glasses. What movie was that?
It was Rally Around the Flag Boys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my agent sent me out, and I went into the audition. There were some other kids there, and then at the end of it, I was asked to stay behind and then read again with one other kid, and then I was asked to stay behind, and we were sitting out in the hallway. Of course, my mom, didn't have a babysitter, so my mom brought Barry, and she was just babysitting him while I'm in there doing my thing. And so anyway, the casting director came out and said, we want to hire Stanley, so you're going to get a call, and we'll send you the paperwork and all that. And then so he was kind of looking at Barry and said, well, who's that little kid? And I said, that's my brother, Barry. And he goes, oh, well, we're looking for another little kid. Is he an actor? And I'm like, yeah, he's an actor. So they said, well, this is great. So, it's no nepotism in show business. So Barry got hired as well that day. And I guess it was about a week later, we were called to the set. And the first scene was we were supposed to be on the couch watching TV, and Paul Newman walks in behind us, and our task was to keep watching the TV and ignore Paul Newman, even though he's talking to us. And so we shot it a couple times, and then the director came up to Barry and said, hey, look, you're kind of looking around. I need you to look right at the TV set. I can see your eyes are not looking at it. So Barry said, okay. So he did it again. The director came back up and kind of gave him the same direction. And then we did it again, and I could see the director was getting pretty irritated at Barry, and I'm trying to figure out what he's doing, because it looked like he was looking at the TV to me. But from the director's point of view, I guess it didn't look like that. So finally, we shot it about 4 or 5 times, and I could see there was going to be an explosion pretty soon, but it was lunchtime. So they took Barry to an eye doctor over the lunch hour, and came back with the diagnosis that Barry had crossed eyes. So it was never going to look like he's looking at the TV set, because his eye was always going to be looking over there. So he got fired. And by about 1, 2 o'clock, I had a new little brother. They sent out an emergency casting call or grabbed some kid off the street. And I did the same scene over with this new kid. And, I was pretty upset that they fired my brother. Amazingly, in fact, this is part of my little spiel that I gave last night at the Little Rascals thing. That was my other, besides Jackie Cooper, my other little connection with the Little Rascals was this director, who was Leo McCarey, who wrote most of the Little Rascals and Our Gang episodes, and went on to become a big time director. He's also the guy that put Laurel with Hardy.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, he was a big deal. And he was the guy that was directing this Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward movie. So Barry got fired, and it was probably one of the most fortuitous firings in Hollywood, because it turned out Barry needed glasses, and almost every little kid in Hollywood, kind of looked like me. And we didn't have glasses, we just had blonde hair and we're cute. And Barry had sort of blonde hair, but now he had Mr. Moto glasses on, and kind of gave him that quintessential prototype nerd look.
Yeah.
And after that, he was always getting hired to play like, Brains. He'd have lines that were like, about that long on the script, and he'd deliver some statement about whirling electronic microns, and it was always some kind of scientific jibber jabber. But yeah, he kind of was the one standout. And although he was younger, we never competed for the same roles because he was 3 years younger and he was so much smaller than me. But in his own right, he was definitely, I think, one of the cutest kids in Hollywood. And he started working again. In fact, one of the things he worked on, well, he actually did some shows, did a TV pilot, did a couple of movies, really great movies. He was in The Errand Boy with Jerry Lewis. He was in Papa's Delicate Condition with Jackie Gleason. A little bit later, he was in My Six Loves with Debbie Reynolds, Cliff Robertson, and David Jansen. But right when I found out I got my 3 sons, I was still doing Ozzie and Harriet. And, my mom had to tell Ozzie he's not going to be able to come back anymore because it's a done deal. He's going to be doing that. And they won't allow him to do any other TV show. So Ozzie was disappointed. And I had an episode coming up. So that was going to be the last one I was in. And they were looking for another kid. And they used Barry. So Barry and I actually did an Ozzie and Harriet together. It was a hard task. All we had to do was talk to Ozzie and eat ice cream. My brother was so into the ice cream, he forgot his line. But he stayed behind, and from 1960 to about 63, Barry replaced me as the quintessential neighborhood kid. And he probably did the same thing, 15, 16 Ozzie and Harriet's over a 3-year period. And during that, concurrent with it, he started doing some My Three Sons episode as a friend of mine, a neighborhood friend. And then ultimately in 65, Tim Considine announced he was going to leave the show. And the show was called My Three Sons. So we needed a third son in a hurry. And somebody realized, well, why not Barry? He's already here. The audience knows him. They write letters to him. And they concocted that whole story. He would be a foster kid. And the Douglas clan would adopt him. And if you missed those 4 or 5 episodes, you wouldn't know what happened to Tim or how the hell Barry became a son. But all of a sudden he was there starting in 65 and lived in the house and was in the bed next to me in my bedroom. So
what was the reason Tim left? I know that he wanted to do something besides just act on the show.
Yeah, well, the year before he had directed an episode, and he and his brother John, who was actually a writer, they wrote a couple episodes, and we shot those. And yeah, I think he had aspirations to be a director. And the 5th year, his contract was up for renewal. And he said, "Hey, I want to come back, but I want to direct half the episodes." And because Fred McMurray was the star, he was uncomfortable, really. I mean, kind of made a concession to Tim to do the one episode, but he was probably not comfortable with that. And they just, no, we can't do that. And, we can't have you direct half and another director direct half because of the way we shoot. We don't shoot episodes out. We shoot, it could be 4 or 5, 10 episodes a day, bits and pieces, and then they're put together. So we'd have to have 2 directors on the set because if it was the episode you weren't directing, the other director would need to be there for, budgetary purposes and sets that we'd have to strike. So they said no, and I think he didn't take it well and just said, well, it's either that or I'm leaving. And they said, "See you later." That was that. And
But you mentioned, did he go on to direct after that? Not My Three Sons, but other shows.
I'm not sure that he ever directed anything else, but he was a good writer. And his brother was kind of getting established. They wrote some episodes for a TV series called Combat, with Vic Morrow, Rick Jason, and his brother went on, and he was writing films for Robert Altman. He wrote A Wedding, he wrote Health. So yeah, he went on, and John was also an actor. I don't remember the movie. It was with Art Carney called The Late Show. It was kind of a crime comedy thing. John wrote that. He was in it as an actor, or I know he was in it as an actor. I'm not quite sure he wrote that one, but yeah. So he was still around, and yeah, occasionally Tim would get calls as an actor. I know. Years later, he was in Patton with George C. Scott, which was You know, that was a major film. I think it won the Academy Award. George C. Scott won, but he was the soldier who was shell shocked that Patton slaps, comes into the tent full of, you know, maimed and blown up guys, and Tim's just sitting there crying, and, you know, he ends up calling him a coward. He's going to send him right to the front because there's nothing wrong with him. He pulls out his glove and starts, you know, slapping him, beating him about. And so Tim is pretty much, that's probably one of his other, you know, big credits. And he almost didn't do that because his agent called and said, you know, I want you to consider this. I've got a role for you. And so he said, you know, but it's only one scene. And Tim goes, well, I'm not doing that. You know, I'm going to be in a movie and be in one scene. He goes, you don't understand. This is the only thing people are going to remember from the movie. And sure enough, the agent was right, because it's probably one of the most shocking and memorable moments in there. And, you know, if you look closely, it's Tim Considine, who's the coward soldier.
I definitely remember that scene. I'm gonna have to rewatch it again now that I know that story. But that's why I like your attitude, because you seem willing to do anything for any show at any time. You're like, yeah, I'll do it. So, and that's probably, like I said before, that's one of the main reasons you kept getting work, is because you're willing to play the extra, you're willing to do the side part.
Yeah.
Then when they want you for the lead, you're willing to do the lead. So that's, I love that attitude, because it's a business where work isn't consistent if you're not like that.
Yeah, well, in my mind, that's a big problem with actors. We're told not to do certain things, not to do commercials, or you can't do this kind of show. It's beneath your dignity, or you're not the star of it, so don't do it. Don't do the co-starring role. Bunch of BS, you know, that your agent, who, you know, they probably know less than you do. And as an actor, you don't even know that much yourself. You're just, you know, feeling your way through the industry. But I've always been of the mind, whatever it is, you know, if it's one line, one scene, guest starring part, lead role, you do it, because in the scheme of things, it doesn't matter. You know, it just doesn't. And I produced this program for actors. It's called The Actor's Journey. I don't know whether you know what that is, but
yeah, I want to get into that later, but yeah, we can talk about it, because that's, I love what you do for actors, and let's talk about it.
Well, yeah, it's something that, you know, I always saw was needed, primarily because of what we just discussed. There's nobody there to answer these questions of should I, shouldn't I, or why would I. But, you know, what most actors don't realize, again, you open a door that opens another door that opens another door. Why? Because you meet people. So if you're constantly saying no, or trying to outguess that if I do this part, this will happen, or, you know, people see me this way, you know, it's bullshit. Sorry the term, but
you can say whatever you want in this show. Don't worry about it.
I try to get actors not to think that way. Anyway, I did this program called The Actor's Journey, and in it, I always saw the need for a program, because, you know, you go to an acting school, or you go to Yale or Harvard or some prestigious university, or a mom and pop acting school, or the Actors Studio. Yeah, they teach you how to act, and, you know, when you graduate, you pretty much know what you're doing, or, you know, have a good jump on it. And so whether you're in front of a camera, up on stage, you're confident, you know what you're doing. Where the problem arises is there's not a program for actors on the business side of an acting. Meaning, you know, there's what I call the non-performance skills that you need to know. And there's a lot of things that are going to happen that you're not going to know anybody that can answer those questions for you. And, you know, you can make mistakes that literally lead you right back out of the industry, and you're done. And we try to help keep people from making those kind of mistakes. So I put together a 10-hour long program called The Actor's Journey. Covers about 65 topics. And, you know, 5 of them are the same 5 that the university teaches as what the business of acting is, which is get a reel, get a resume, get a headshot, try and get in the union, and try and get work, try and get an agent. But if that's all it was, then how come I have 65 and those are only 8 of them? So it tells you that it's a much deeper well of things to learn that are not being taught, you know, to actors. And so you flounder around, you know, wasting time trying to figure out the industry, trying to figure out if I should do this, do that, or, you know, should I go into an audition this way or that, you know. And you need to know the answers to that, like, right up front. So what I did is I assembled 100 people from the industry. One of the criteria was that that person had to be in the industry and working for at least 20, possibly 30 years. So they know whereof they speak. And it wasn't just actors talking to actors, because that's another big problem, is getting misinformation from just actors. But I put together directors, producers, executive producers, showrunners, agents, managers, casting directors, casting agents, literally almost every way you could look at what an actor's supposed to be doing, but from the point of view of business, maintaining your acting career as a business. We even had the president of the Screen Actors Guild at the time, the president of the Directors Guild of America, people that sat on various boards at these unions, and they're the ones who are teaching the program. And, you're literally getting the information from the horse's mouth, as I used to say. And it's sort of a novel thing. It affords actors the chance to, you take your acting classes and, for a few moments before you plunge yourself in the industry, not really knowing what you're doing as an actor when you're not acting, but, what you need to be doing. And what you find out is most of your time is spent on those non-performance skills, trying to get more work. So this sort of streamlines that process. So, you can probably learn all this material in a week. It was originally a DVD program. And so whatever, you watch it a couple times and take some notes, and you'll be probably ahead of most actors who didn't see it, that are working and still don't know what they're doing. And, this is really a shortcut to leapfrog ahead of everybody else. And you'll know what's expected of you. And some of the stuff we have in there is pretty onerous. I mean, you go, God, I don't even know if I want to do this. I didn't realize this is so involved. I thought it's just going to be standing there acting on a stage or in front of a camera. And, you find out at the end of your career, like me, somebody who did work a lot, everything I ever did, including plays, was on a piece of film. Yeah, maybe it would run for 2 or 3 months. Well, I'm 70. That would tell you that for the other 69 years, I was involved in the business of acting, trying to get work. That's where you spend all your time. And the acting and the jobs, they're not the work. That's the reward for the work you did to get those jobs. So, but even at the end of your career, it's a very, if you did a lot of movies, what have you got? 50 hours, 100 hours, on film. And for those 50 or 100 hours, you spent, 40, 50 years trying to get those parts. So it'll tell you it's kind of disproportionate, but you need to know what you're doing. There's just so many mistakes actors make, especially at the beginning, because they have this perception of what they think is needed. I know actors, ones that were just starting out, that said, oh, I'm playing a bad guy in this thing. So they end up going into the audition, bringing a gun or like a big knife into the audition room. And, for 15 minutes, they've just terrorized the director, the producer, the writer, and the casting director. And then when they walk out, they go, whoa, I don't ever want to see that guy again. Don't ever bring that person back in. And then the worst part is the casting people all know each other. So after you've made a mistake like that, it gets around and you're done. You're never invited back into another audition. It's over. Yeah. So that's just one thing. I mean, in the actor's journal, we list about 100 things like that can go wrong, or that you're just misinformed, or there's just no way to get this information about what to do and what's expected of you, or how you break the ice in the audition room, because the audition isn't even really about the audition for the part. Yes, it is, but the thing that's really going on is going in and, if you get the part, that's great. That's the icing on top of the cake. But what you're really there for is to go in and impress those people that you're a good actor. Because what you don't know is you may not be right for that part, but you're not going to know that. So they're just politely sitting there, nodding their head, thinking, we're wasting our time for the next 15 minutes or 10 minutes. Because this guy really isn't right, and they don't tell you that, so you walk out of the room not knowing. But that's detrimental in a way, because you don't really know what you did wrong, when in actuality you did nothing wrong. But you go in and you make a choice and you give it your best shot, and that's what you're trying to do. And if you're not right for the part, the reason you want to do that is, guess what? Next week, those people are casting something else. That director's directing something else. And they go, you know what? That guy wasn't right for that, but he's definitely right for that. Call that guy back in for this. And that's what you're trying to make happen. And well, I'm just kind of giving you some stuff that's in this program, so actors can get a grip of what's going on and to stuff that they're never going to be privy to. But this is probably the reasons you weren't being hired. You know, it could be they already hired your older brother who's 6'6", got red hair, and you come in and you're an Hispanic guy. And they go,
Yeah.
you know, they go, what is this guy doing here? I had that happen to me. I was casting something for a musical that I wrote and was producing. And I wrote it, and I wrote the part for about a, I don't know, 50-year-old, early 50s-year-old guy. And we auditioned probably about 15 of them. And I wasn't real happy with the guys that we saw. A couple of them were okay. And so my stage manager comes back in, he goes, there's still one more person out there. And I go, all right, well, why, is there something wrong? He goes, it's a woman. I said, a woman? Who sent her here for that part? So I go, look, let's be polite. We'll read her. I don't want her to think, you know, she came here and she probably sat out there for an hour. So let's let her do her thing, and then we'll politely let her go and say thanks for coming. So she came in and did the reading. She walked out and thanked us, and we thanked her. And I turned to my partners and I said, she nailed the part. I don't know about you guys. She blew the socks off of that those other 15 guys we just saw didn't. I go, what if she was that part? What if she was that character? Let's just change it. I mean, I think it's better because I didn't really write it for one, but I didn't even think of that. But she was so convinced. I ran out, told the stage manager, she gone? He said, yeah, she's, I just saw her walking down the street. I go, go get her, bring her back. So he ran down the street. She was getting into her car and told her they want you to come back in. So she came back in, and we read her a little more seriously and gave her another scene to read. And anyway, she walked down and I said, hired. She's hired. That's who I want. And we all agreed, and we changed the script. And you know what? In the show, she was one of the highlights. I mean, people like, she also had a song, and it turned out to be the way she did it. And she wasn't really a great singer, but she had this, I don't know how she did it. It was just like almost mind blowing. She stole the show. She had the showstopper in this musical. And her song was completely out of left field. It wasn't like the rest of the music, which was all rock and roll. And it was kind of a throwback, almost like a 40s kind of song, but the way she did it, I mean, and I still remember her name. Her name was Kelly Britt. And so the point of the story is you can go in and you can be wrong, but you're so good, you change the minds of the producers who are watching you. If they can keep their minds open, you know, that something could be better or add something, you know, that you didn't even expect. And it just, you know, it just, I mean, it's such a great addition to the show. And I mean, she literally changed the face of the show when we got it up on its feet. And then the audience reaction to her was like, every night, man, she was the star. When she'd come out at the end of the play, I mean, even over our lead, she got a much bigger applause, you know. So it's well worth it. But, you know, it's important for actors to know these things, that your job is to go in there, and even if you're not right, you do what you're going to do. You make your choices and convince them that this is the way to go with it, and you were wrong. You know, this is a better way to do it. So it's an important lesson. Or when you're shooting, I always like to point out something to actors who, you know, I said, sometimes you're going to get in front of directors and, you know, you're going to learn the part and do what you're going to do. And I'm sure you're going to do it really well. But in the midst of doing it, something's going to happen, or there'll be what I call a happy accident, you know, something unexpected. And what you have to learn to do is you have to learn to stay in character, because sometimes that'll happen. And with some directors who just aren't open, they say, cut, do it again. And hey, don't do what you just did. But if a director's worth his salt, he's going to be looking for things to happen that weren't in the script. And case in point is, I'm sure you've seen American Graffiti a few times, but in the movie, remember when Charlie Martin Smith arrives at drive-in, and I think Richard Dreyfuss is leaning against the car, and Milner, they're standing there talking, and Charlie comes in on this little motor scooter, which is perfect for him. You know, he just wouldn't have a motorcycle. He's a nerd, but he pulls in the scene, and then in the background, you see him pull up. And what happened was Charlie, he didn't really ride a motorbike or a motor scooter, but he stopped and forgot to turn it off. But what happened was he stopped, and before he turned off, he let the clutch back out, and the thing just shot forward into like a cigarette machine or something, a Coke machine there. And then he didn't hear the word cut, so he kept going and kind of, brushed his hair back and, like hope nobody saw that, act like a big dude, like nobody. And so finally got up, to whoever it was, Ron Howard and the other guy that was standing there, and here's cut. And so he goes, print, move on. And hey, Trent says, wait. He says, didn't you see what happened? She says, were you watching? I pulled in, but something went wrong. I crashed into the cigarette machine. And George Lucas said to him, that's perfect. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for things like that. It made it so real, and and it was so perfectly in character because he's the nerd and trying to be cool when you're not, and things like that are going to happen. So you have these accidents you didn't expect, and so the actor always has to go, because there's a lot of people that would have done that scene, and Charlie, is a great actor, and he had his wits about him and just kept going. Where others would stop and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I let the clip." It's like you don't want to do that. Just stay in character and keep going, and things like that happen all the time, and you just more than likely those are going to be the printed takes. Yeah, so very important thing to know.
I interviewed somebody, his name is PJ Byrne. He's more of a character actor, but he's played in some. If he's one of these people like a Dick Miller, where I've seen him before. But he said that he has a great working relationship with Martin Scorsese because he auditioned for the Wolf of Wall Street, and he said he loved how easy he was getting along with him. He thought he was funny, and he was able to improv a lot. And he's been using him in almost in every movie he's done. So he even had a TV show they produced called Vinyl. So he said that exactly what you were saying. He goes, just stay in character, go with the flow. And if you have a great personality and this and that, and you get along with them, that's another thing they look for too, is because they want to know that they can work with you. And I'm sure you heard of or saw the movie The Warriors, right?
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah, God knows how many times. Yeah, it's one of my favorite films.
So I interviewed two of the people from there. And I can't remember his name. His last name is Fox. Like one of the characters, but he's the one that got thrown into the subway by the cop. So I met him. Yeah. I asked him, I said, why did they, because I knew the story, but I wanted to make sure it was true. And he goes, I said, why did they kill you in that movie? He goes, because I was an asshole. And the reason is that Walter Hill did not get along with him at all. And I said, we need to get rid of this guy. Let's just kill this character off in the middle of the movie because I don't want him in this movie anymore. So I love all the advice you're giving him. One more story I want to talk about with this, because I think this is so interesting. I want to talk to you more about this, the actor's journey. I'm not sure if you worked with him, but I know you know Bob Balaban.
Yeah. I think I met him. Yeah, he's great. Yeah, well, all the way back from Midnight Cowboy in the theater.
Yeah. Well, I saw one of my favorite movies growing up was Close Encounters, and he played the French interpreter.
Yep.
And they said that he knew nothing of French except for one thing he learned in high school. So he went in for the audition. Said that Spielberg said, all right, that's perfect. You got the part. And they said, oh shit, what am I going to do? I don't know any French. And that's when Spielberg was saying later in an additional interview, he goes, I encourage my actors alive to whatever you can do to get the role and then worry about the rest later. And that's exactly what happened to him.
Well, that happens. That happens, you just got to do and learn what you got to learn to do it. I had jobs where I was going to be expected to ride a motorcycle in a commercial. Well, I never was on a motorcycle, but I showed up in the audition. I remember my friend said, whatever you do, if you ever ride a motorcycle, make sure you let the clutch out real slowly. And so I pretended like I was unfamiliar with this motorcycle. I said, so where's the clutch? He said, oh yeah, right there. Just touch that with your toe. So I did, and somehow I revved it up a little bit and let that clutch out. So I'm going around this parking lot thinking, oh God, I hope these people don't realize I can't ride this thing. So I went around 3 or 4 times, and I thought, well, I'm never going to hit this commercial anyway. But it was kind of like, well, I got through it and did an okay job. And then about half hour later, I had an audition at the same place for another commercial for Kemper Insurance. The first one was a Honda motorcycle commercial. So I go into the other one, and basically I think I had like 2 lines, and what it was, I'm a guy stranded out in the desert, and I got the hood up on my car and I'm all dressed up and my car won't start. So the Kemper Cavalry comes and rescues me, this pack of horses. The guy's got the flag and they're all dressed in like cowboy clothes, and my job was to run and jump up on the back of the horse with the guy with the flag, and then we go into the sunset. That's what I was told. So anyway, we got through that part, and then they said, "Yeah, can you ride a horse?" And I said, "Yeah," and I actually could ride a horse, so I wasn't too worried about it. But I said, the only thing I'm a little unsure about is getting up on the horse, because you said I'm gonna have to jump up on the back. Well, horse's ass is like 6 feet up. It's like those people that jump over those poles. I'm going, I don't know. So they said, well, we want you to come down to Pickwick Stable tomorrow. We want to see you ride. And so I did, and took off, went up, waited in this field, came back, perfect. They go, now we got to make sure you can get up on the horse. So I tried running at this horse and jumping up. There's a guy in the saddle, and I'm trying to jump up on the butt of the horse. And I must have hit that back of that horse and fell down about 5 or 6 times. I said, look, I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want to, say I can do something if I can't. I don't think I can get up on that horse. And then one of the guys that was going to be part of the Kemper Cavalry was there. He says, what if we give this guy just a boost? And it'll look cool, like we're helping him. And he goes, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. More service from the insurance company. So he gets there, he gives me that thing where they, do their fingers like that. My foot went into that. He gave me a little boost, and I was up on the back of the horse, the director, and that's perfect. We'll do it that way. So got there, and all day long we did the same thing over and over. But the hard part was I had never ridden on the back of a horse. I can ride in the saddle. I can even ride with an English saddle, but sitting on the back of the horse with no stirrups, you're just bouncing, and there's nothing to get your balance. I'm hanging on to this guy. I'm going to get killed here. There's like 20 horses behind me. So finally they finished that. Then they had a lot of shots of the Kemper Cavalry riding up and crisscrossing and all these, beauty shots of the horses and coming up to pick me up. And I was in my dressing room that they had for me. And I thought I was done for the day. And then about 5 o'clock, there was a knock at the door, and they go, they want to do one more shot with you. And I'm thinking, oh no. So it came out, and I go, what do we do? And I was like so nervous. He goes, oh no, it's just one more shot. We're going to have you on the camera, and you guys are going to ride right at the camera. And right before you get that, you're going to do a hard left turn, and the sun's going to be over there. And we're going to whip pan around and see the horses going into the sunset. And I'm like, well, that's okay. I said, but I got to tell you, when the horses are turning, they're not going straight. That's when I tend to fall off the horse, because the inertia just makes you, they're turning, you don't have anything, so you're going like that. So he said, well, just hang on tight. I was, okay. So we did it again. We're coming right at the camera, and right before we get there, it goes that way. And, so the horses turn that way. I'm wanting to go right into the camera, falling off the horse, but I didn't. So we made the turn, and we're going, and they're filming. And then all of a sudden I hear the guy that I'm on the horse, and he goes, jump. The cinch just broke. And the saddle started going over with him this way, and I'm trying to lean the other way. And so I'm out of here, man. So I let go. Fell on the ground. We were going about 20, 30 miles an hour, and tucked into a ball, and I'm rolling. And last thing I saw was this guy going backwards off the horse. And he, crashed to the ground. And meanwhile, all those, I was just going like this. And all those horses went around me. And anyway, the whole crew came running up, and I'm laying on the ground. This guy's laying on the ground. I said, hey, man, it's too late to buy any of that Kemper insurance. I feel all busted up. So, yeah, I didn't get hurt, but man, my clothes were shredded. My shoes were shredded. My sweater was shredded. My knees on my pants were shredded. And, I didn't know it, but while I was in my dressing room all day long, the cinches were breaking, and about 3 of those guys got hurt. They got broken arms, broken bone. In fact, the guy that went off backwards broke his arm. I didn't break anything, but that night, boy, was I sore. Oh my God, from being on a horse all day. I had to put Epsom salt in the tub, and I walked bow-legged for about a week after that. And I remember when we took the bus back, I was with the stunt guys, and some of them were stunt guys and some were actors, and they're saying, hey, we're going to hit them up, because we didn't know how dangerous this is going to be. We should all get stunt pay, not actor pay. And I was like, yeah, I'm for that. That was like grueling. Well, I talked to my agent. I said, no, what, I'm okay. So whatever, I'll eat the money for the clothes. So I just said, I just hope the commercial goes on the air. So, at least I got more than whatever was scale for the day, because it's all they paid you for a commercial in those days. So this commercial that Kemper did went on the air. This is after My Three Sons. It could have been around 1973, 74. And it was playing during the tennis season, which was about 3 months long. So it was on, I mean, a lot. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but for 10 years, that commercial stayed on the air, which is phenomenal. Usually it's, a year if you're really lucky, and they run the heck out of it. But in those days, they paid really well too. So I'm in this commercial that made $15,000 a year for 10 years. Do the math. That was for one day's work. Of course, almost got killed. But in fact, that led to another thing. Just I was saying how these doors open, doors go. So about 3 months later, I went out for an audition for, remember the movie Planet of the Apes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Remember they turned it into a TV series
I
finally?
do. It's Friday nights. I used to watch it all the time. I loved it.
Yeah. So I go out on this interview, and a bunch of actors my age there. In fact, trying to think all the different people that I knew who were, it was before they had careers. Mark Hamill, I remember, was the other guy there. So anyway, I read it, and it sounded like it was a good part. But I remember I went up to the casting guy because he had me. He said, again, just wait in the other room. So I knew I had it. And so there was one other actor there. And so I said, well, it's between you and him, and they want you. So I went, great. I said, but I got one more question for you. I said, about that riding on the back of that horse.
Yeah.
I said, I think I saw the movie, and most of these actors didn't have clothes on, like a loincloth, no, not even any shoes. I go, is that the way they shoot? He goes, yeah, that's the way they shoot it. And I said, and I noticed there's a chase in there through the woods. I said, hey, look, I got to tell you, I just did a commercial where I probably should have been dead, but then I didn't get injured, but I got pretty, ripped up on a horse. So are you going to use a stunt double? I said, no, they don't use stunt doubles. But that's why we asked you if you could ride a horse. And I go, well, I can ride one. But I said, it's problematic to stay in it because there's no saddle, even though you're going to be riding in the center of the horse, not behind some other guy. And I said, I gotta be honest with you. I don't think I want that job. I'd love to do it, but I just really had a bad experience. So I said, let me go out in the lobby and I'll tell Mark he can have the parts. He goes, okay. So anyway, I went out and I said to Mark Hamill, I said, all yours, buddy. I hope you can ride a horse. I was out of there. So yeah, he ended up doing the Planet of the Apes, and because I had a wife, I had kids, I couldn't take a chance doing that. And God, if you fell out and fell on a branch and got impaled or broken up, like I said, and if you fall off, at least I had clothes on before. This would have been horrendous. And I don't care how much they tell you, nothing's going to happen. If you've done this stuff long enough, something always happens. So I decided to be rather safe than sorry. But anyway, got Mark
Between
a
this
job.
and Lassie, I mean, you almost drowned in Lassie. You fell off a horse in the commercial. So acting's been very dangerous to you for you.
Yeah, it has. Well, in that movie, Private Parts, I had to see where I got hit over the head with a bottle in the basement. And I remember Paul shot it, and I was going, I go, is this really going to hurt? He goes, oh, no, it's a, what they call a candy glass bottle. So it just breaks up in a million little pieces. Well, that's true if you do one take. But when they finally started doing the close-ups of it about 6 times, you still have some of the glass in your hair. And then the next bottle drives the glass in your head. It's basically, I'm like, whole back of my head's like all bloody, but he finally got his shot with the backlit with the glass all spraying off, and they shot it in slow motion, I guess, or high speed, so that they could project it slow motion with all this glass, flying off my head. So I'll go home and there's like blood, coming down my head. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that can happen to you out there. And I don't know, those actors that want to do their own stunts, that ain't me. I don't want to do that.
And I definitely add on the outro crash test dummy to your list of all these you've done.
We don't have a crash test dummy. Get an actor. That's the next best thing. It's like when we did My Two Sons. We had to do these Hunt's commercials. They were our sponsor, Hunt's Ketchup. And I swear to God, I think they were. We had like Hunt's. I remember the year they came out with different flavored ketchups. There was pizza flavored and barbecue flavored. I think one was like anchovy flavored pizza, and it's like, this stuff is horrible. We had to put it on something. I said, I think they're just testing on actors to make sure it's safe for consumers. This can't be real. Who's going to eat this? It was, I'm telling you, actors really go through it. Or, you know, you do a cereal commercial. Remember I did one of those too, somewhere along the line. You know how many bowls of cereal I had to eat in an entire day? I mean, it was probably like 3 boxes of Cheerios or something. You know, I was trying to throw up so I could get some of it out of me so I could do another thing. Or if you ever do a Pepsi or Coke commercial, you know, you end up drinking like 20 bottles of Coke during the day. You know, you feel like you're going to blow up, you know, because you got to take that big swig at the end or drink most of the bottle while they, and I think they were holding on it, just giggling, you know, off screen. Let's see how much this guy will really drink. God, insane.
Well, I have a question for you regarding that, because I know when Jackie Chan first became popular in the U.S., he was mad because the U.S. wouldn't let him do a lot of his own stunts for insurance purposes. And he goes, oh, man, in Asia, they let me do everything. But then you hear stories about Tom Cruise, who does most of his stunts in Mission Impossible, Top Gun. All that. So have they become stricter for insurance purposes with actors doing their own stunts?
Yeah, I think so. And it's just not worth it to injure the actor who could then shut down the project because he can't work or can't walk. What are you going to do? You know, you have to either replace him and start over. So, you know, it's better to waste a stunt man than an actor. And, you know, some of these actors have egos and they want to do it. But, you know, I would never let an actor do it if I thought I could get around having a stunt person do it, because again, they could shut your whole movie down just because they land wrong. And, you know, maybe they did the stunt right, but, you know, there's a famous one where they did the stunt, and this goes back, and it was pretty funny. It was with the Three Stooges. And there was a scene in one of the Three Stooges where they're, you know, redecorating a home, and they had that great big, I didn't even know they had power saws back in the 30s, but I guess they did this humongous saw. And Mo's standing on the table, putting something up, and they put something on the table, and he says, cut it in half. It was Larry or Curly cuts the the thing in half, but what he doesn't realize, he just cut the table in half too. And when you watch, the table implodes kind of like that. Well, Mo fell and he ended up falling on the floor, but he broke his ribs because he hit the corner, and you see him laying on the floor. But the trooper that he was, you can see, because they don't cut to another angle, that scene plays out, and he gets up and kind of like, well, let's get over there and get that door. And he walks off, and then they go behind like the frame of a door, and then they cut to the side. Well, that was probably 2 days later, because he had to go to the hospital and get all bandaged up and broke his ribs. But he stayed with the scene, stayed in character, and I'm sure he was. If you've ever cracked a rib, man, it's like one of the most painful things that could ever happen. It feels like somebody sticks a knife in there and then breaks it off and leaves it in.
Yeah,
so
I never
he must have
broke
been.
one.
Oh, I cracked one once, and I couldn't believe it could be that painful. I did it, and it was like nothing at first, and then about an hour later, I'm like, what the heck? And I mean, I couldn't even touch my side. I had to go to the emergency room. They took an X-ray and said, hey, you cracked a rib. And oh yeah, we can't do anything about it. All we can do is tape you up, and here's some pain pills because it's really gonna hurt for about a day, maybe 2 days. And then they were right. It was, besides my kidney stone, probably the most painful thing I ever felt in my life, because it was so persistent. It wasn't like a wave of pain and going away. It just came, and when I got there, it stayed.
And I know people that broke their ribs and kidney stones, and they both said both extremely painful. Another one that kept going with the scene, I mentioned him before, Tom Cruise. I guess I saw it during the making of one of the Mission Impossible. He was jumping from building to building. His ankle snapped or something, and he smashed it, and he just kept on running and kept going with the scene. Some actors can do that, but like what you said was perfect. Is like when you have a guy of that, the whole movie is right on him. He's basically in every scene. He gets hurt once, they're gonna have to shut down for 6-7 months. They're gonna lose so much money. And you said it too in Jurassic Park. Your friend is the girl, but they just put her face on there. Not like you CGI, so they don't even really have.
It's just so easy to do that. You know, why take a chance? You know, with one of your lead actors. You know, because what you're trying to do is finish the film. I mean, you know, even off-screen actors do insane things, and now they can't work. With that guy Paul Walker and that for Fast and Furious, you know, coming down, you know, 100 miles an hour and whatever was a Porsche and got killed. 2/3 of the way through the movie, so they had to figure out how to finish the movie. Yeah, I'm sure they did a lot of CGI and got a double and shot over shoulders, so you didn't see his face and stuff. But yeah, if you want to be that, go be a stuntman. Don't be an actor, because it's just not worth it. It's like actors that go off the rails too mentally and have issues or have drug problems and drinking problems and bring it to the set. It eventually gets fun. I really like that person, but you know what? Get me another actor, because you're gonna end up, once the insurance company knows about that person, they go, yeah, you can hire that girl if you want, but we know all about her drug problem, and we question whether she might finish the film or is she going to die on your watch. So here's your insurance bill if you want her. And you're going, oh my God, it's like 10 times what I thought I'd be paying to have that actor. It's like just easier to get another actor. That's why I said you can't do that, because it's such a small industry. If you screw up like that, or people know you have those kind of problems, they're not going to hire. It's just easier to go to the next person. You literally have to be. Yeah, you'd literally have to be one of the top actors before maybe they'll use you, like a Nick Nolte or something. But even then, it damages. I'm sure he wasn't getting all the work, because nobody wants to put up with it. They're there. It's serious business. You just want to get through the day, and you don't want to deal with people that are not showing up on time or doing destructive things, in the course of the shoot.
Robert Downey
that's
Jr.
when it really is a business. Who's that?
I was going to say Robert Downey Jr. is the perfect example. For the longest time, he would not get work because of all the drug issues he had. And then he finally was able to prove himself, cleaned up his act, and now he's, back in the limelight.
Bigger than ever.
A while that from the Brat Pack to now, that where he had a long time.
But the problem is, he's Robert Downey, and he kind of had a somewhat of a track record before that. If you're not Robert Downey, you're not getting a second chance. It's just going, get me another actor. I like the guy and I like him personally, but he's got too many problems that could cause us problems. It just always comes down to a financial decision, on the set.
Yeah, and I can see that. I can definitely understand the business side of it. Like, what, we're making a movie, we want to make money. We just don't have time for all this, and we can't lose money, especially now with all the streaming services and all the more. There's so much more competition, because people, I'm not going to go see in the theater. I'll buy Hulu. I'll do this and that. So there's a lot more options for people. So when you're making a movie, I'm sure that they want every single penny.
They do, and they want you to be there, and they want you to be as serious about their movie as you can be. It's just it's just too financially risky, for a production to have elements that, or people that are crazy. The problem too is, in fact, we have a whole segment in there, not only to show people the business of it, but we cover the advent of, you actually get famous and you make it, which comes with a whole other set of problematic things that actors don't think about, and it's weird. Once you finally make it, you can't go anywhere anymore. So are you willing to do that? Because if you go into a restaurant, you're going to be surrounded by people 24 hours a day. Every time you step out of your house, they're going to drive you crazy. They're not, doing it because of anything malicious. They just want to know you, touch you, talk to you, get your picture, get a selfie with you, that kind of stuff. And after a while, it's it really does try on you. But then the other thing you find out is most of these people are just average people that are now millionaires, or 10 million, $20 million, or you're just making whatever, $15 at a McDonald's flipping burgers before this, and you made it. Then what happens is people come crawling out of the woodwork that you didn't know, that are your new best friends, that try and get you into drugs, and you get into the drugs, and they're making a good living off of you, and all these fake friends that surround you. I mean, you really need, and you're thinking, oh, look at all the new friends I have, and I'm such a lucky guy. And meanwhile, these people glom on you and drain you, and most actors, for whatever reason, are not good money managers. It seems to be the antithesis of that being into acting. So it's like, wow, I had $10 million last year, and now it's 5 years now, and I know I made $20 million, and I don't have a penny. Ripped off by managers, agents, fake businesses that people want you to invest in, drugs that so there's a whole other thing that happens if you make it too, that if you're aware of that, that's what's going on, you can, maybe preempt it from happening. If not, then, you're going to go on a joyride for 10 years. And when you come out the other side, you're going, well, what happened to my house? What happened to my car? Where's my wife? And, oh yeah, I'm paying $100,000 a month alimony. And I mean, it's just awesome what can happen.
It didn't happen because of that, but Nicolas Cage is one example where he just got all this money, won the Oscar, and then he went crazy buying castles, cars, this and that, and now he's making movie after movie just to get back to where he was before, monetary wise, because he just blew through it.
He's lucky. He's lucky. Yeah. Most people will have that happen, and then the industry doesn't want you. If you have that kind of publicity and everything, you just look at it. This guy's like a nutcase. I don't want him. So yeah, he's fortunate, and that he had a career and was successful and acquired all those things. But do you really need all those things? Yeah. It's sort of like I go, gosh, if I had like 10 million, would I go buy? $10 million probably wouldn't even buy you a mansion now. But well, let's say I had 20, so I could get a 10 million. I wouldn't do it. I just, I don't need it. My ego doesn't. I have like a regular house. It's a very nice house. It's big, but it's not a mansion by any means. And I never felt the need for that, or
same way too.
Exotic cars. Yeah. I drive a regular old like Honda CRV that's, I think it's like 9 years old now. I just don't care. When I was younger, that's a different story. I did care about it. I had a couple of exotic cars and had a nice house in City and another one in Laurel Canyon. But as you get older, you go, doesn't mean anything. It's like Mark Wahlberg. He built that $20 million, $50 million showpiece up in, I think it's up in Beverly Hills. I forgot what street it's on, but it was probably fun because it sounds like he'd like to build a house, but it's like living it's like you bought a hotel and you're the only person living there. What do you need that for? You know what the air conditioning bill is going to be and all those things, and who's going to clean it? You constantly have to have people living in your house trying to clean it, and anyway, he's trying to dump it. Now he can't dump it. It's like 50, I think he's trying to get $50-70 million for it or something. Why would you even want that? Just get a really nice house, or just buy like a low level mansion, a standard mansion for $5 or $10 million. And but yeah, this show palace. I mean, the only person that's gonna be able to buy it, you're gonna have to go meet somebody in Saudi Arabia that's got $70 million that got stuck in their wallet somewhere, and they can pull it out and buy it, and then they're stuck with it because you get those houses, they never sell. It'll take 5-10 years to sell something like that because there's only a few people that can buy them.
And I mean, they're impressing somebody for 30 seconds, and after that, who really cares what they have? It's either I like you as an actor or not. I don't really care what you. That's why I love people like you, your brother Ron Howard, who just kept your head, kept like you had success early as a child, kept steady work throughout your adult life, and you're just a regular guy. And Ron, I never met him, but he seems like such a down to earth guy. He's married to his childhood sweetheart. I mean, he started off Andy Griffith, Happy Days, directing all these blockbusters. So I love seeing people like you, him, your brother, that just do your job, you do it well, and you just keep
I always go home at night.
Yeah.
Home at night, I do my own shopping.
Yeah, I love that.
I changed my own flat tires. Well, I'm that kind of guy anyway. I was always that guy, even way back when I was 21. When I did buy my first house, I remember we called something. I don't remember what it was. I was changing a light bulb in the bathroom, and I stepped into the sink to get closer. So the whole sink just dropped through like the top. I said, wow, what did I do? And how do you fix this? So I called some guys, and anyway, they recognized it. And they said, oh, well, that's going to be like $5,000. Wow, that's a lot of money. So I thought, I'm going to see if I can do this myself. So I went out and bought a Sears saw and got some wood, and then read this thing about how to do it, and then how to tile. And I thought, well, I'm going to get a tile. I think I am going to get some marble for this. So I had some guy come in and put marble, and then it was like brown marble, and we dropped a fire engine red sink into it. So I can't say I had the best taste in the world. We had the most ostentatious little bathroom in this house, but all because I stepped on the sink. But you know what? After that, I learned how to do all that stuff, and I know how to. I can do electrical work. I can do plumbing work, copper plumbing. what else? Drywalling, framing, roofing. Yep. It's like,
Because if people recognize you, sometimes they might say, yeah, that's $5,000, and normally it's $1,000 if they think
that's what I used to tell my buddy Steve Earlsback, because he seemed like he was always damaging his house. He had a part where he's in a wheelchair and he kept running into the wall and put some holes in the drywall. So he said, I had some guy come out and tell me it was like 2,000. I said, oh yeah. I said, they recognize you got movie star price. This is what I go. I said, I'll come over. I know I can fix this in like 30 minutes. I'll bring some drywall. I know how to put it in, make it stay in the hole. And then, you just put another piece in when they got a backing thing in there, and then just drywall mud. And then when you get a chance, you can paint it. I'm not hanging around for that. But yeah, I was becoming like the fix-it guy for my movie star friends.
I love it. Construction guide to the movie star, Stanley Livingston.
Right. Yeah. It's just like, that's not my real job, but I sure know how to do it. But I said, it's easy to do, but after you've been reamed a few times by people that come out and, are really honest about stuff, it's pretty crazy.
We have to add that next chapter to the actor's journey.
Yeah, really. Well, I was just thought I'm just thinking as a person, the more you know, the better off you are. So, and I was always the kid that took everything apart and then put it back together and see how it worked. And then finally, when I got a house, I was taking that apart and putting it back together. So I just, over time, learned how to do it.
Now available in one collection. Confessions of a Frenetic Mind. 5 tales of blood-curdling terror. Available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
All of a sudden I hear, brim, brim.
What's a diaphragm again?
Ha! We caught one.
They're supposed to be weird.
Oh, yeah, no. If you say so.
I've always wanted to be in a movie.
Waiting around for autumn, waiting around for autumn.